This is Todd Nevins. I'm the host and chief talker at the Go Hunt Life podcast, and I'm an outlier.
Hey everybody, welcome to Outlier on Air, the podcast where we interview founders, disruptors, and mavens. As always, I'm your host, Ever Gonzalez. On today's episode, we have Todd Nevins. He is the founder of Go Hunt Life, the podcast. Todd, welcome to the show.
Ever, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, we've had a couple conversations in the last few weeks. Right, we were introduced by a mutual friend. Once we kind of got a hold of you and kind of looked into what you were doing, we were like, we have to have this kind of guy on our show. And so thank you for accepting our invite. We're excited to introduce you to our audience, and we're going to have a good time.
You're very welcome. I'm glad to be here. Definitely.
Let's get right into it. As of right now, where are you calling us from?
Austin, Texas.
So Austin, Texas, that's not going to last very much longer. Where are you going?
We're 3 months out from pulling the ripcord and moving to central Mexico.
So Austin, Texas, awesome place, right? A lot of good stuff's going on down there. Entrepreneurship, startups, tech, a great scene down there. What is pushing you or pulling you to Mexico?
Well put, pushing or pulling, probably a little bit of both. And you are right. A lot of people that are here in Austin, and we say, yes, we've been here for coming up on 2 years, and we plan on leaving in 3 months. And everyone is like, wait, you're leaving Austin, Texas? Why? It is an incredible startup community here, but it's a community of people that are not from here. So it's reinventors, and 85% of the people that you meet have not lived here more than 5 years or less. So it's a city that just helps the next person in line behind them, because that was once them not very long ago. And it is really, truly a community, even though it's a city of 1 million people and it's cranes everywhere and all that kind of stuff. But if you jump into the co-working spaces downtown, you get into the scene. But we are getting pulled and pushed back to Mexico. We lived in the Yucatan for 5 years of our lives before living here in Austin, moving here to Austin. And we're getting pulled back into the traveling digital nomad lifestyle again. Once you do it once, it's just always in the back of your mind. And so we're doing it again.
Yeah, I like that you brought that up. Digital nomad, right? I was going to ask you, what do you consider yourself? Are you a serial entrepreneur? Are you a business guy? Digital nomad? How would you describe your place in this world right now?
Digital nomad is probably the closest thing. Solopreneur. I've built a number of different companies, none of them exiting into being sold out or anything like that. But this is my 4th different company that I've built. And certainly the Go Hunt Life podcast, it kind of follows that same pattern of idea to then execution. So digital nomad, where I've got resources that I use. I don't have any employees, but I've got different resources that I use to help build my business and grow my business as well as other people's businesses together.
Yeah, well, let's paint the picture a little bit deeper here now. CLICKPlacement is where you bring in revenue. That's what you do to pay the bills, that kind of stuff. You're great at it. You're helping other entrepreneurs, other businesses. The Go Hunt or the Go Hunt Life podcast is where you talk to other digital nomads, other people that are kind of in this type of space around the world. What are you spending your days doing right now as you're getting closer to making that big move? Has it changed at all?
No, it hasn't. 90% of my time is spent on CLICKPlacement. I'm an AdWords marketing consultant. The vast majority of my clients are startups, small businesses, and nonprofits. And I cross promote my AdWords marketing business with my Go Hunt Life podcast. But I work with probably the strangest, coolest company. One of the coolest companies that I work with. They sell lobsters online, and
Nice.
they ship live Maine lobsters all over the United States. And I never knew that was an industry until I connected with them. So it's all different types of businesses. So 90% of the time, I focus in on AdWords marketing for clients across any type of industry, really. And then the other 10% of the time is focused in on the Go Hunt Life podcast, and then helping my wife's company, which is an importing company from Mexico, Amazon FBA company.
Yeah, I want to get into that whole thing with the wife and her own business and Mexico and all that stuff here in just a sec. But what I like about what you're doing right now is you're living life on your own terms. And for example, when you make the move, I'm assuming that most of your clients, are they even going to notice? Or is anything going to change in their world?
No, not at all. They're not going to notice or change, implying that they're not going to know. They know that I'm going, but my daily life won't change. So my work and commitment to my client won't change either. We're actually designing where we are staying in cities, and even specifically within each city, around co-working spaces. I work out of a co-working space in Austin every day, and the co-working spaces are an incredible way to collaborate with other people like digital nomads and entrepreneurs. But then also it provides stability. It provides a stable spot to work, and so no, they won't notice a blip in regards to the services that I'm providing to them.
You've done this before, right? You've been away. Or at least out of the U.S. for quite a while, doing this sort of thing before. You came back for a while, and now you're leaving again. What's the hardest part of living this type of lifestyle outside of the United States?
The hardest part is logistically when you're leaving. It's gotten easier this time around. It's a lot easier. Number one, because we've done it. It was 7 years ago when we sold everything down to a few suitcases and got on a plane and moved to Mexico. This time around, just the companies out there have caught up to people wanting to do this as a simple way. Where do you send your mail? Having a UPS store doesn't solve it anymore, because you have a company, and I have a company that's an LLC, and you can't have it headquartered out of a UPS store. You actually have to have a registered agent. Now there's a company that was founded here in Austin it can be your registered agent. It could be your mailing address. It can be your notary public. It checks about 5 boxes off for under $500 a year. It solves a major problem. So double Wi-Fi is what I am dependent upon. You've now got Airbnb that has been entrenched in any medium city around the world. So you've got that access. Just things are easier to do this now.
Why Mexico specifically?
We have lived in Texas for over 20 years before moving to Mexico. We've always been back and forth to Mexico on vacations. And once we moved there, we lived there for 5 years and got just entrenched into the culture. And we met people from all over the world, foreigners that had moved there from Canada and the U.S. and Australia. And we saw what Mexico really was. We also like that it's against the grain. That Mexico has a negative connotation to a lot of people in the United States, and it's wrong. And we have felt like we were champions in regards to know this is the truth on the other side of the border, not what you think. We've lived it, and we live it every single day. Trust us. Come and visit us. We'll show you firsthand. And that's part of it as well. And certainly we're going down to try to document that. Again, this time around, we're going to go down and shoot a lot of video, really a behind the scenes tour of Mexico, and roll that into the Go Hunt Life podcast as well. So you can see firsthand exactly what it's like to drive across the border and check in on the other side and get your paperwork and drive through the area of Mexico that's known like you're going to get shot as soon as you get out of your car. We're going to document that, and we've done it before, and we're going to, we can show firsthand that no, that's not the case.
You know, it's funny. I'm Mexican, right? I was born in Mexico. I was raised in Southern California. Now I'm in Utah, but married a tall redhead, white woman. And when we go down to Mexico, and there's still a little bit of that fear coming from her, right? And so for those that are listening that are like, man, I would love to do something like this, maybe even in a smaller scale down in Mexico, but they're too afraid, right? And you mentioned this a little bit. You lived there. You were amongst the people. You were doing business out there. You just know where to go and who to talk to, or how does that work?
It's just like driving in any city in the United States that you're maybe unfamiliar with. If you do take a wrong turn and you find yourself in the wrong neighborhood, things can go wrong. If you find yourself in the wrong neighborhood at 3 a.m., why are you out at 3 a.m. in the wrong neighborhood in the first place? Yeah. So it's that same kind of logic. You don't drive at night, not because you're going to get stopped by bandits, but because the lighting isn't as good and the roads aren't as good and there could be livestock in the road or something like that. You got to taper it back a little bit. Drive during the day. But there are gas stations all over the place. You're never going to go more than, 50 miles without passing a gas station. And so you just use your common sense like you would anywhere else. And yeah, we've never had an issue, but there is that perception of driving through Mexico is super duper dangerous. And it's not. They've got toll roads and gas stations and McDonald's and all of the normal stuff.
And you're Spanish?
It's okay. Muy poquito. It's mine is all right. I can get around. I can go to the grocery stores and wherever I need to go, restaurants, of course. My wife's Spanish is a lot better. She owned a retail store when we lived in Merida, Yucatan. And so she was forced early on to not just learn Spanish to get around, but actually learn Spanish for business. And so that really, really forced her to learn it and learn it quickly. So she's definitely ahead of me in that department. But I'm looking forward to getting back down there and blowing up the comfort bubble and forcing me to learn it. I wish it was better, and it's going to be. It has to be if you're living there.
I love it. That's so exciting, and no doubt that we're gonna want to check in from time to time and see how you're doing. But so as entrepreneurs, right? One of the married entrepreneurs, anyway, one of the biggest challenges that we have sometimes in the beginning is trying to get the spouse on board. Hey, I have this idea, or I want to do this. It's going to take a little bit of time, a little bit of sacrifice, all that stuff. Let's go do this. So sometimes there's some pushback. Sometimes they're all in, all over the place. For you, though, what was that like? It sounds like obviously she's on board when you came up with this idea, or did she come up with the idea? Tell us that story of how it happened that you decided to be a digital nomad and just kind of going and living this type of lifestyle. It takes two
it takes two. Yeah. It definitely does. And it was 7 years ago, and there was a definitive moment where we were going to make this change. I quit my first ripcord out of corporate, and my only ripcord out of corporate was when I was 28, and I walked out of a job with benefits and a salary and 13 people reporting to me, managing a team, building a team, the whole thing, and walked out and started an executive staffing firm, literally with a stack of 500 index cards with numbers and company names and all that. So I ripcorded out of that, and so when my wife and I got married, I was already out and self-employed. She was working a corporate job. Leading up to us leaving the country and going to Mexico, she was fed up with corporate life, like what I did years before that. She was fed up and ready to do something else and go out on her own like me. And part of that was like, let's go on this grand adventure down to Mexico. And she reached a breaking point in her corporate job where she just was like, you know what, We've got some savings, and you're able to make money from anywhere. Let's sell everything we own and get on a plane with our dog and go to Mexico and figure it out. And we literally did just that.
And it sounds like you haven't looked back, right?
Well, no, we haven't. It changed us forever, and there was all sorts of anxiety and tension, and we flew there not knowing Spanish, and you're changing everything. Spanish, you're in pesos, you're in the metric system, you're in a foreign country, a different city. You don't know anybody. You don't know where to get your oil changed. You don't know where to go to the dentist or go to the grocery store, and so all of that is it's unsettling, but that's what we bargained for, and we grew immensely. And now the friendships that we've developed from living there are lifelong. We just went on a 3-week vacation with 8 of them that are our friends from Merida. So it's a life-changing thing. And my wife is pretty fearless. She went down there not really knowing what she was going to do. And within a year, she opened a retail store. And that's not easy. That's very difficult. And doing that in Mexico, in a foreign country, and you're a foreigner, you're not a local, there are immense challenges to that. And she plowed through them all. And so she's pretty fearless. And so we came into Austin and got reset. And now we're wanting to blow up our comfort bubble again. And that's where we're at.
You know, it's funny with entrepreneurship, right? We read these amazing stories, people taking risk, right? Jumping out of a plane without a parachute, and right, not knowing what's going to happen next, type of a deal. But of course, we hear a lot of the success stories, and I want to paint the picture here as well that obviously you're having some success, you're living the lifestyle that you want, but I'm sure there were some challenges for those that are sitting on listening, wanting to one day do something like this. What are some of the things that we need to kind of look out for? Some of the red flags, or some of the things that we should prepare for? Because I'm sure it wasn't, like you mentioned, always easy and always fun, but it can be done. So for those newbies, what can we do?
Yeah, and one of my guests just recently said it perfectly, and it's not, don't walk in tomorrow morning and quit your job and think everything is going to be great. Yeah. Do not do that. You've got to have a plan, and you can have a plan that's 6 months out or 6 years out. It doesn't matter, but as long as you have a plan and it's specific. Normally, if you're going to go out on your own, be a digital nomad, that means you're going to be self-employed. Okay. So what are you going to do? Do you already know how to do something now that you can translate that into earning money online? My bet is yes, something. You can teach what you know, you can train what you know, or you can provide services to other people or other businesses around something that you either know now or you're passionate about and can learn. So if you're not retiring, you need income. So focus on the income first. If you're going to leave in a year, how much do you think you're going to need? Either cushion savings and or income coming in. What do you need to look like in 12 years? What's your life need to look, in 12 months. What does your life need to look like for you to leave and go nomadic? How much money are you going to be bringing in? And you simply just backtrack it. Each month, you need to do this. You need to get certified in web design, WordPress development. You need to build your own company website, create your own LLC, get all of the things that need to happen in place and just put it on a list. This month, this is what I need to do. And at the end of the month, they're done. And the next month, you have your next list. And at the end of those 12 months, you're ready to go. But you will never figure out 100%. Never. You will figure out about 60% of what you need to do. Where are you going to stay? Are you going to be healthy, safe, and income? Figure out the big things, but the other 40%, like us not knowing Spanish, that could have been a big excuse for us to delay our trip for years. We don't know enough Spanish. We don't know enough Spanish. We didn't worry about that. That was one of the things that was on the others, on that 40%. We'll figure it out once we're there.
You know, it's funny when I think about doing this, and right, sounds very appealing to me. Sounds something like my wife and I can kind of get behind, even with our 3 small kids. Something that we're always thinking about. But when I'm like sitting down and actually thinking about the process and things like that, I get overwhelmed sometimes. But you explained it perfectly. Small chunks at a time. It's daunting. But it can be done, right?
It can be. It can be. I've met people that have kids and they do it with kids. We don't have children, so that kind of changes our mentality a little bit. But I've met people that are much more bolder and braver than me that do this with kids, and they figure out a way to do it. But it's just, you break it down into chunks, in months or even weeks, and you just piece it apart 1 week at a time, and you'll get there. You really, really will.
So you're heading out to Mexico in 3 months. What's the end game? I mean, do you know what that's going to look like? A year, 2 years, 7 years, whatever?
Do not know. We know what's going to happen in 2018, but not any further than that. We will be in central Mexico and San Miguel and Guanajuato for the first couple of months, and then finishing back in Merida the latter part of the year for the last 2 or 3 months of 2018. And then after that, we don't know. What we will own will be in our SUV. We have our dog, and we have an SUV, and what we need will be in it. Our plan is to not really settle in any area longer than 3 or 4 months.
Oh, really? So on the move every 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, we're going to try to press ourselves. There's a huge amount of Mexico that I've not explored, Central and West Coast Mexico. I've not explored it. My wife has a little bit with her business. She was sourcing products around Guadalajara area, so she's explored Mexico City and the areas around Guadalajara a lot more than me, and I have not. So we want to go explore other parts of Mexico that we haven't hit yet. But yeah, we don't want to settle in an area longer than 3 or 4 months. We want to kind of press ourselves, at least for the next few years, to keep moving. And Airbnbs and certainly the local expat community and the locals around Mexico, you can find places to stay and house sitting and short-term rentals all relatively easily now.
Yeah, let's talk about the expat community. What, especially down in Mexico, what does that look like?
It's incredible. My wife started a Facebook page on a whim, thinking that we would just communicate with our friends through this Facebook community in Merida. This is about 5 years ago, and now that community is about 3,000 people in that group. So the expats down there, we band together because we're all kind of going against the grain, and we fell in love with Mexico for a million different reasons.
The food, it's being kind of one of them, right?
The food, hey, that's normally in the top 1 or 2. Right. Anybody you talk to, but yeah, we've fallen in love with Mexico for one reason or another. But we're all there together. But we all deal with things that are uncomfortable and outside of the norm, whether you're from Canada or the US or Australia or wherever. It's just, it's just a different culture, and things are, you get into a completely new environment, and then you have your car breaks down. Well, how do you find a mechanic? Where do you go? And so you start asking around for referrals from people that have been in front of us there, in line in front of us, and the expat community is incredibly helpful.
It's funny. I'm assuming that there are a lot of people listening. They're like, absolutely, sounds amazing. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Where others are sitting here, and especially when you said that you don't know what's going to happen after 2018, sitting there kind of hyperventilating, thinking, how can people live like that, right? I love the fact that it's free, and you don't know what's coming, right? Wherever the wind takes you, kind of an attitude. Were you raised that way? Was that always the case? Are you pushing yourself to be that way a little bit more? Where do you fall?
That is a great question. I am pushing myself. I grew up in an incredibly stable environment. I went to the same school from kindergarten all the way through high school. I graduated from college on time, like all of those normal check boxes I hit along the way. And then I moved to Dallas, and I lived in Dallas for 18 years, 14 years in the same house. So all very, very stable. And I remember when we moved to Mexico, we sold our house in Dallas, and we actually sold it early, and we were actually homeless for 2 months. We had committed to being with our families at Thanksgiving and Christmas. This is in 2010, but we sold our house, and we literally didn't have anywhere to live, and we didn't have our rent starting in Mexico until January 1. So we had 2 months. And we went on the coolest 60-day road trip all over the southeastern United States. Nice. And we had our dogs, so we stayed in pet-friendly hotels and bars and restaurants and all those things. And it was an incredible experience. And then we went to Mexico, and we got settled in a little bit. We we rented a place for a year and a half. We bought a house. We moved in. We got 3.5 years in a house and all that. And then we moved here, and we've been in an apartment again. We like being minimalistic and nimble, and not being tied down to one particular area. But we are pushing ourselves a little bit, not knowing where we're going to be in just over a year. We've never lived like that before.
your friends that are not digital nomads, your family who seem to be, pretty stable when it comes to traditional life, right? What do they think about you and your wife doing this again?
They shake their heads at us and they're like, yeah, only Todd and Allison, only Todd and Allison. We certainly raised a lot of eyebrows when we were moving to Mexico for the first time. And then once we were there and once they came and visited and they saw what we were doing and how our lives had changed and how we had grown. Now it makes sense. I don't think we're going to surprise anybody anymore with our decisions. I really don't. We made the big one a few years ago, and now it's like, yeah, we're not surprised. We'll come and visit you wherever you are.
It's as we start to kind of wrap this up a little bit. One of the questions that I like to ask everybody that's on the show is, when we have you back on the show 3 years from now, what are we going to be talking about, right? And I get all sorts of answers. With you, though, I have no idea what you're going to say. I mean, I think you're going to say that you don't know because you haven't thought that far ahead, or who knows where you're going to be then. But do you know? In 3 years, when we have you back on the show, what are we going to be talking about? Where are you going to be? What's this going to look like?
Our lives professionally, I can see that I will have an AdWords agency with other digital nomad AdWords consultants all over the world.
That's awesome.
That I can see that for sure. And I will be hundreds of episodes into my podcast. That's going to be nonstop. And my wife's online business is going to be thriving. And we're even actually looking into right now. I'm doing specific AdWords, but because she is going into Amazon and building her own business, she's actually getting hit up by other people wanting her to consult with them to help them grow their Amazon business. So that's also another potential service that we would be able to offer under the Click Placement brand. As far as where we're going to be living ever, I don't know. It could be, I'm confident to say the chances of us living back in the United States in 3 years, under 5%.
Under 5%, really?
Under 5%. It will be Mexico, or South America, or somewhere over like in Portugal, I would say. So let's say South America, Mexico, or Portugal.
Listen, we're 400 episodes in, and so we have people that we reach out to again, a year later, 2 years later, and so there's no doubt that you're going to be on my calendar, and in 2.5, 3 years, we're going to have you back, and it's going to be awesome to see what has happened in those 3 years, and more importantly, where you are at that point. And so, if we have tons of guests on our show is Outlier on air, there is no doubt that you are definitely an outlier, right? There are not a lot of people doing what you're doing. I mean, there are communities, but for the most part, you're living your own life. You're doing what you're excited about. You're pushing yourself to continue to grow and get out of your comfort zone. And that's amazing. That's inspiring.
Thank you. I can't wait to come back in 3 years. I can't wait to see what we've experienced over the next 3 years.
It's going to be a surprise for you too. That's right.
It will be. It will be. It certainly will be. I love it. I love your message. The outlier. That is such a great tagline. I can't get enough of that.
I love it. Yeah. So for those that are interested, right, those that just kind of want to know more a little bit about you and about being a digital nomad and things like that, where can we find you online? Where can we reach out?
Best spots would be to go to the gohuntlife.com page. All of our social channels are there. As far as my AdWords business, that is at clickplacement.com. And if you want to reach out to me personally, I'm on Twitter at Todd_Nevins.
Perfect. So Outliers, you can go to outliermagazine.co. That's outliermagazine.co. First of all, subscribe to the podcast, rate, review it, share it with your friends. But there you're going to find Todd's links to social media accounts, websites, all that good stuff, to the podcast. Reach out to him. He's the real deal. He's doing some amazing things. If this is the type of lifestyle that you want, or just want to pick his brain on anything else, feel free to send him a message. Todd, this has been amazing. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, for sharing your words of wisdom and just kind of your life experience. It's very inspiring. So thank you for being on our show.
Ever, thank you very much for inviting me.
Perfect. Outliers, we'll talk to you tomorrow.